All right, friends, feet and straps. So generally 1.5 to 2 springs is the spring load that you want to be on. Getting people into feet and straps is one of, I think, the most challenging things to cue. And it's important from a safety perspective. So I'm going to cue through that. And then I encourage you to figure out the best way for you to say it, kind of just like you practice a lot with 100, practice a lot of how to get people into feet and straps. So here's the way that I love to do it. So lie down, set your feet on your foot bar, take your loops off, hold them in your hands, press both feet into your foot bar to open the carriage, pull your right knee in towards your chest and loop the loop around the base of the ball of your foot, and then stand in that loop so you've got some weight. Then bring your other foot in, loop that foot, and you're ready to go. Okay, so that's how I like to get people into feet and straps. I'm pretty particular about that. So that's the how to get people in. There are trillions and trillions of different variations that you can do here in feet and straps. Leg circles, Peter Pans, frogs, those tend to be the most common. No matter what legs are doing in feet and straps, what you as the instructor are looking for is lumbopelvic stability. So feet and straps is not really about what your legs are doing. It is about the connection of your legs and your pelvis. It gets into a lot of pelvic floor work and can be really useful and really healing if and when it's taught that way. It is not just like stretching your legs around at the end of class. And I feel pretty strongly about that because when people just flop their pelvis around, if they have SI joint pain, and many people, especially women, do, it creates pain. And I feel really strongly about this because I am one of those people. And so no one told me when I started doing Pilates that if I wasn't careful, that was going to hurt my back. And so I kept leaving Pilates. And I was like, why does my back hurt? And it was as soon as I fixed my feet and straps, that fixed it for me. So the modification, if someone has low back pain and it is related, it's like non-specified low back pain, it's not a disc injury. It's to have them imprint their spine. So Shan, will you extend your legs out to 45? And then let's just look here. So imprint your spine so we can see what that looks like. Good. All right. So by imprinting your spine, you're pressing your low back to the carriage, essentially. So you're coming into a posterior pelvic tilt, finding that. Come to a neutral spine, just so that we can see neutral. Good. So that's where the natural lumbar curve comes back in. And then come to an anterior pelvic tilt, just anterior. Oh. Anterior pelvic tilt, just so that we can see the one that's super easy for you, yes. Just so that we can kind of see the difference there. So those are like, start to pick apart in your clients what's posterior, what's anterior, what's a true neutral. Generally, I'm looking for hip points and pubic bone to be parallel to the floor. And then I'll also watch people's butts. Surprise, surprise, your job is to watch people's butts as a Pilates instructor to see if it's staying. So oftentimes people will do a really good job in their setup. They'll stay in this, but then as soon as their legs start to come back towards them, they don't find the connection of their seat, and their legs start to come up and they come into a posterior tilt. So that's exactly what it is. And then they take their legs super wide and then they arch to get their legs down. Yes. So do that again. So do it real bad, real wrong. Yeah. Yes. Yep. And so that's what I see a lot, especially when people are really new, because they think this is about my legs. And if I can make the biggest circle possible, I'm the best Pilates student in the world. And we have students who joke that I've ruined feet and straps for them, because when you finally slow down and you find the control, it's a lot of core work, right? Yeah. The other thing that I would caution people on is don't let your clients go too light on springs here, because at that point they don't have any support for their legs. So how light? I would not go below a good base or no? I do think 1.5 springs is a good base. 1.25 is the absolute lightest that I would go on it. And that is only if someone probably tried to fight me on it. Okay. Like if someone in a therapeutic class was really puny that day and they were like, I just can't, because it doesn't give them very much to push against. And so they're kind of losing the integrity of the movement at that point. So, all right. Other things to think about. So I'm watching just like you do in footwork, supine arms and abs. I'm looking to see, is the person in the middle of their carriage? Are they integrated in their upper body and their lower body? Are they pressing the backs of their arms down? Are they keeping their rib cage grounded? Is their low back nice and grounded? Yeah.
Want my legs up.
Yeah. So let's look again at, especially when I'm teaching brand new people, I'll have people kind of find find a neutral pelvis, press your legs to 45. Good. Lower your pubic bone just a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. So now lift your legs as high as you can without letting your tailbone lift. And then press your legs as far down as you can without letting your tailbone roll towards your spring. So keep your hips nice, steady, and stable. Good. And then go back and forth like that a couple of times. Your goal is to not have the sensation in your low back change. If you're really truly keeping your hips stable, sensation in your low back doesn't change. Like the pressure between your low back and the carriage is stable. So this can be a really useful thing if you're teaching a therapeutic class or like brand new beginners, to have them start to find this, because if they can find this home base, then they can bring this to their circles, because they've got their high point of their circle, they've got their low point of their circle. The other thing that I'll watch for is, like, I'm looking to see, are Shannon's heels still in line with her tailbone, or does she have one leg that's pushing more? The leg that's pushing more will generally send them on a diagonal to the opposite side. So if she was pushing more with her right leg, then her legs would be over this way towards my right. So normally I'll look at that. You see it more in frog than you do anything else. Or if you're doing like a scissors, like if you open to a V, that was a good ankle crack. So take your legs out to a V and then back together. Yeah, do that. Just so oftentimes I'm also looking, like, are people's legs moving at the same rate? Are they making the same shape in them? And then when I'm teaching, like when you're teaching feet and straps, you'll want to look too, are their leg bones staying in the same rotation? So like, will you show what it looks like if you leave one of your legs in parallel and turn one of your legs out and start circling? Yeah, so this is really surprisingly common. It probably does feel really weird because you've got so much awareness. So that's another thing that I'll generally look for. People often don't have an awareness of whether their legs are in parallel or turn out or internal rotation when they're in feet and straps. You can do all three versions. Generally, internal rotation will have the smallest range of motion, parallel will have second smallest, and then external rotation will have the widest range of motion, just because of the way that our hip sockets are shaped and how things move. All right. I think that's everything feet and straps. And I just really want to drill home that feet and straps is not about making the biggest circles you can with your legs. It's really about finding your leg pelvis connection. One of my favorite cues ever for feet and straps is, imagine your feet lost power, and all of this is happening from your leg and your core. Because that helps people think about it a little bit differently too. Oftentimes you'll end up with people who are pushing a lot through their feet, and they'll end up with a foot cramp. And if you can ask them, like, imagine your feet lost power, and then if someone gets a foot cramp, just have them flex and point their feet a couple of times. That should help solve that issue too.
Let's do frog, so that, were you planning on doing?
Yeah, let's do frog. Okay. So that what?
Because there's some pretty common misalignments.
Okay, cool. So we're doing frog. So show frog. So keep your heels glued together, bend your knees in, and then press out. All right, what are the common misalignments that you tend to see here? Okay. So that's letting.
It feels like I'm doing more because my knees are coming. And then a lot of this too, because people are just real flexible. My opinion is like this, but like shoulder distance, is that?
I like shoulder distance apart. When I ask people to move shoulder distance apart, I think they engage better. Like it looks like a more integrated movement rather than being way out.
And how far do you tell them to come in?
I say come as far in as you can without letting your tailbone lift, which is different for everyone. But if you have a class and they're newer, or every single person is coming into a posterior pelvic tilt, or they're elvising their pelvises, you can say stop at 90.
Okay.
Sometimes if you want to bias towards kind of the seat thigh connection. You can have people stop at 90 really intentionally. Tell people like resist the springs on the way back, find your thigh butt seat connection, stop at 90. And sometimes that sells it to them. If you can say, we're going to stop at 90 today because I want you to feel your seat thigh connection. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to?
Did you have any cue with the blueberry?
Oh, the blueberry. So if you're working with people and you want them to stay in a neutral pelvis when they're laying on their back, you tell them to imagine that they have a blueberry at their low back that they don't want to squish. That can help prevent them from putting their low back flat because they've got that blueberry there. But it's not so much that's under their low back that they're going to come into an anterior pelvic tilt. So that's why I like the blueberry cue.
Yeah.
That was someone who was applying, I think, to our teacher training. We have a question on our teacher training application that says, like, what's the best cue you've ever heard in a class before? And that's where that cue came from.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's lots and lots of different cueing ideas. And then basically, you know, what you're looking for. Oh, the other thing with circles, dinner plate sized is my favorite to get people really into their core versus really large. So if you come to like 45 degrees and then you make dinner plate sized circles. Yeah. I keep thinking we're done and then I think of more cues that I like. So another way to think about about circles is circles only, if you have two circles, they only touch at one point if they're true circles. So it's not really that they make, like oftentimes I think we'll say like bring your legs up together through center, but that's really making two Ds. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then can you make both? Shannon's laughing about D's. If you
just making broken plates, basically.
You're making broken plates, pieces of bread. Can you make all parts of the circle equal? So like you move through every single part of the circle at the same speed.
That'll shut people up.
That has never once shut one of our clients up, but it does ask people to stay checked in a little bit more than they might otherwise at the end of class. Like I want to say in the classical order, feet and straps comes much sooner and it's not, you know, it's a very contemporary thing to end with it. And so like the original intention of the work is deep core connection. And so it can be really powerful if you program it that way. It's also a really nice thing to end class on because it is kind of nice and you get to lay down again. And so I don't know that there's necessarily a right way or a wrong way, but if you do have someone with low back stuff, just ask them to, and you know that it's not a disc issue that would be exacerbated by a posterior pelvic tilt, have them put their low back down so that, and limit their range of motion. If people are really struggling to control, slow down, limit range of motion. And that advice will carry you through just about anything you teach in Pilates. Cool. All right. That's feet and straps.